It began with silence, not the calm kind, but the kind that felt heavy, unnatural, like the universe itself had stopped breathing. On the outer edge of the Galactic Empire, in a region known as the Varian Expanse, the night sky shimmered with countless stars. Then, for a brief moment, they flickered, as if something immense had just entered their space. In the observation decks of Outpost K-47, alarms started flashing red. Officers rushed between consoles, their eyes wide and hands trembling. "Contact detected," one of them shouted. "No transponder, no signal code, it's just there." At first they thought it was a sensor glitch. The Empire's scanners were powerful, but sometimes gravity storms could create false readings. Yet the signal grew stronger, sharper and darker. Something enormous was moving toward them, and it wasn't slowing down. The officer in charge, Commander Rathan, leaned forward. "Send the identification ping." A pulse of blue light spread into the void, bouncing off the unknown object. The return signal came back distorted, fractured. "No ID, no communication. Just static, run it again," Rathan ordered. They did. The same result. Then the lights on the station dimmed. The power grid flickered. The communication array cut out mid-transmission. For a few seconds there was only darkness, and a low, vibrating hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. When the lights came back on, half the systems were offline. The object had vanished from sensors. The crew barely had time to breathe before the main monitor lit up again. Not from their feed, but from a visual override. A shape appeared, long, silent, black as the void itself. It was not like any ship they had ever seen. Its surface looked almost alive, flowing with faint blue lines that pulsed like veins under metal skin. It had no markings, no engines, no signal emissions, just presence. Commander Rathan opened his mouth to give an order, and that's when the image distorted into chaos. The feed screamed with static, and one by one, every signal from Outpost K-47 vanished from the Empire's network. In the Imperial Command Tower on the capital world of Velis Prime, alarms began to echo through the marble halls. Technicians shouted across glass screens as data collapsed into unreadable static. Fleet sensors across the sector reported the same event. An unregistered vessel had entered controlled space, and 3 patrol fleets had gone missing trying to identify it. Admiral Corvin stood before a massive holographic display of the galaxy. The region around the Varian Expanse glowed with red warnings. He folded his hands behind his back, his voice calm but tight. "Replay the last transmission." A distorted voice filled the command room, the sound of a pilot breathing fast. "It's right in front of us." No heat signature. "It's imminent silence," Corvin frowned. "That was Patrol Fleet 7? "Yes, Admiral," replied his aide, pale-faced. "And 6 and 5 before it." They all vanished within the same coordinates. Corvin turned to the tactical officer. "And visual data?" The officer hesitated. "There's only one frame that survived the corruption." The lights dimmed as the hologram flickered, showing the image. It was dark, nearly invisible, but the outline was unmistakable. A warship enormous in scale without any engines or visible weapons. Around it floated debris, small lights, fragments of ships that used to be Imperial. Corvin stared for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "That's not possible." The Emperor's face appeared on the main holo feed, cold, sharp, and expressionless. "Admiral Corvin, explain." Corvin saluted. "An unidentified vessel has entered our space. It doesn't match any known design or registry. Our patrols were neutralized within minutes. We are still collecting data." "Neutralized?" The Emperor's voice deepened. "By what?" Corvin paused. "We don't know, sire." The ship didn't fire. It didn't move. It simply passed through them. For a long second, the Emperor said nothing. Then he gave a single command. "Send no public transmissions. This stays within the High Council." Corvin nodded. "Understood. But outside the capital, secrecy was already impossible. Civilian monitoring networks across the outer colonies had picked up fragments of the destroyed fleet's distress calls. Amateur stations began replaying them across the holonet. Grainy footage, trembling voices, and one repeating signal buried under static. No one could translate the language. It wasn't in the Imperial database, but every time it played, listeners described the same strange feeling, fear deep and instinctive, as if something ancient was speaking from the dark. Meanwhile, the mysterious warship continued drifting deeper, into Imperial territory. It ignored beacons, blockades, even weapon locks. Entire planets went silent as it passed. Communication arrays failed, orbital defenses powered down, and ships vanished without a trace. Scientists from the Imperial Research Bureau gathered in sealed chambers, analyzing the limited data they had. Dr. Lyra Mion, head of Xenotech Studies, stood before a projection of the ship. This structure, it's impossible. The hull material defies every scan. It doesn't reflect light or energy. It absorbs them. Her assistant whispered, "Could it be a new rebel weapon?" She shook her head slowly. "No rebel fleet has that kind of power." Her eyes narrowed. "Some of these readings, they match records from the old Galactic Wars, pre-Empire era, our time when weapons were designed to erase entire civilizations." Her words sent a chill through the room. The Emperor's advisor demanded, "You're saying it's ancient? A relic?" Dr. Lyra hesitated. "Perhaps, or something far worse. Something that was never meant to be found." Hours later, in the capital, Admiral Corvin stood by the window of his command office, watching the sky. The Empire's banners waved across the skyline, glowing red and gold, the color of power. Yet beneath them, the city felt uneasy. Rumors were spreading faster than the Empire could suppress them. People whispered of a ghost ship, a vessel older than the stars, a weapon that could make worlds vanish. Corvin's communicator buzzed. His aide's voice came through. "Admiral, new transmission from the Outer Rim. Civilian channels are broadcasting another signal." Corvin frowned. "Patch it through." The screen lit up with static. Then an image, a spinning starfield and a faint, mechanical voice repeating the same words over and over. It wasn't in any known dialect, yet somehow the tone carried emotion. Rage, sorrow, judgment. Corvin felt a chill. "Translate it." The technician shook his head. "We can't, sir. The system can't even detect its structure. It's not language as we understand it." The Admiral watched the flickering light fade. For a brief second, he thought he saw movement behind the static, the outline of a face, human-like but distorted, staring back at him. The connection cut. Corvin stood frozen in the silence that followed. He turned to his aide. "Get me the Emperor, now." Because whatever that ship was, it wasn't just entering their space. It was coming for them, and the Empire had no idea what it wanted. The Imperial Council met in silence. The chamber was dark, lit only by the faint blue light of a single holographic star map. Every red mark on that map represented a fleet that had gone silent. There were many. Too many. At the center stood Admiral Corvin, his jaw set, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "We've lost 3 patrol fleets in less than 24 hours. No distress calls. No wreckage. Whatever that thing is, it's not a smuggler or a pirate. It's something else." Around him, the high-ranking officers argued in whispers. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others warned against provoking it further. But all of them shared the same fear. No one had ever seen a single vessel destroy Imperial fleets without firing a shot. The Emperor's voice cut through the noise. "Enough!" He stepped forward, his golden robes reflecting the cold light of the hologram. "This ship has humiliated our Empire. The people demand strength. We cannot allow panic to spread." Corvin met the Emperor's eyes. "With respect, sire, we don't even know what it is. Every attempt to scan it has failed. It emits no energy, no heat. It doesn't even seem alive." "Then make it dead," the Emperor said sharply. "Assemble a battle group. Use full force if you must." Corvin hesitated. "Sire, that is an order, Admiral." Corvin bowed his head. "As you command." Within hours, the largest fleet in the Varian sector was mobilized. It was called Task Force Iron. Hundreds of destroyers, cruisers, and carriers forming a wall of firepower around the unknown ship's projected path. The formation stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Corvin stood aboard his flagship, the Imperial Valor, watching the tactical screens fill with glowing blue icons, every one of them a warship ready to fight. "Fleet status?" he asked. "All units report ready, Admiral. Shields at maximum. Weapons charged." Corvin nodded slowly. "Then we wait." The object appeared on the edge of sensor range, silent and dark, moving at an impossible speed. But when it reached the fleet, it stopped. For the first time, the thing halted in open space. "Range?" Corvin asked. 3 million clicks. "It's just floating, sir." "Open a channel." A deep hum filled the command bridge as the fleet's communication arrays linked together. "Unidentified vessel," Corvin began, his voice echoing through the void. "You have entered Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately or you will be engaged." Static. Corvin tried again. "This is Admiral Corvin of the Galactic Empire. We are prepared to—" A sudden wave of static slammed into the comms. Every screen flickered white. The crew flinched as the signal grew louder, a single distorted voice repeating the same tone they had heard before, that unknown message. The wreckage of Task Force Iron drifted through cold, empty space. Broken hulls spun slowly, silent tombs among the stars. The Empire's recovery ships moved carefully through the debris, scanning for anything that could explain what had happened. There were no bodies, no escape pods. Not even black boxes remained intact. It was as if reality itself had been erased around the unknown warship. Inside the Imperial Research Station Asterion, far from the front lines, a small group of scientists gathered in a sealed laboratory. The air was tense. They spoke in whispers, afraid that even the walls might be listening. Dr. Lyra Mayan, the lead xenotech analyst, stared at the main monitor. "We've pulled something," she said quietly. Her assistant frowned. "From what?" "There's barely anything left." Lyra didn't answer right away. She enlarged the image, a thin shard of metal floating inside a containment field. It looked ordinary, dull gray, but strange electrical waves pulsed across its surface. This fragment came from the wreck of the destroyer Vigilant. When we scanned it, we found data traces burned into the structure itself. The assistant leaned closer. "You mean digital data?" "Yes," Lyra said, "but not Imperial code. This is something different. Something older." She activated the translation module. Lines of green text appeared on the screen, jagged, incomplete, but readable. "Directive active. Return to origin. Execute cycle." The assistant blinked. "What does that even mean?" Lyra didn't answer. She typed several commands, cross-referencing the pattern with the Empire's oldest archives, classified records sealed since before the founding of the current dynasty. After several minutes, the screen froze on a result. Language match, Old Terran Standard. Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "This code is human." Her assistant's eyes widened. "That's impossible. The humans were wiped out 3,000 years ago." "Everyone believes that," Lyra said, staring at the flickering text. "But if this ship carries human code, then maybe they left something behind." Meanwhile, Admiral Corvin sat alone in his quarters aboard the Imperial Valor, watching the stars outside his window. His mind refused to rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that dark ship again, silent, cold, unstoppable. The door chimed. "Enter," he said. A communications officer stepped inside holding a data pad. "Admiral, urgent message from Research Station Asterion. They've decoded part of the wreckage." Corvin motioned for her to continue. She handed him the pad. He read the message once, twice, then looked up, his face pale. "Human code," he murmured. "That can't be right." The officer nodded nervously. "They're certain, sir. The system patterns match ancient human networks. The fragment even contains coordinates. Deep in the outer rim near the Perseon grave fields." Corvin frowned. "That's empty space. There's nothing out there." "Apparently," she said, "that's where the signal originated." Corvin's heart sank. "You mean this thing didn't just appear here? It came from there?" "Yes, Admiral. The warship might have been traveling for centuries." He turned away, gripping the edge of the console. "Centuries," he whispered. "What kind of machine survives that long?" In the capital, the Emperor's High Council gathered again. The chamber was colder now. Fear was spreading through every layer of the Empire. Citizens whispered about the black ship that swallowed entire worlds. Trade routes closed. Armies refused deployment orders. Corvin appeared via hologram before the council. "Sire, the research confirms the vessel systems are of human origin." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that ghosts pilot a ship through my empire?" "No, sire," Corvin replied carefully. "I believe the ship is automated, an ancient war machine still following orders long after its creators died. It may be running a command it can't stop." "What command?" Corvin hesitated. "We don't know. But the data references something called Directive Vengeance." The Emperor leaned forward. You're suggesting this thing is attacking us because of a centuries-old command? Corvin nodded slowly. It's possible, sire. And if the old records are true, humanity once fought against the early imperial houses. Perhaps this ship was built as a weapon of retaliation. The chamber filled with tense whispers. One counselor slammed his fist on the table. Then destroy it. Use the annihilation beams. Corvin's voice rose for the first time. We already tried. You saw what happened at Varian. It can't be destroyed with our current technology. Every weapon we fire is absorbed into its hull. The Emperor stood, his expression unreadable. Then find a way, Admiral. The Empire cannot live in fear of the dead. The transmission ended. Corvin sat in silence, staring at the blank screen. For the first time in his career, he felt truly powerless. Back in the research station, Lyra continued studying the code fragment. She barely noticed the passage of time. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. Then something new appeared, a hidden file buried deep within the corrupted data. She decrypted it slowly, piece by piece, until an image formed on her screen. A blurred, holographic face. A human. The figure spoke, though the voice was faint and distorted. If this message is found, we are gone. But our sentinels remain. We built them to protect what you destroyed, to remember what you erased. When they return, there will be no negotiation, only balance. The feed ended. Lyra sat frozen, heart pounding. Her assistant whispered, "What was that?" Lyra turned to him, her voice trembling. A warning. From the humans. That night, the Empire's outer colonies went dark again. No explosions this time, just silence. Entire planets lost contact. Corvin watched the reports coming in, one after another. His officers looked at him with fear in their eyes. "What do we do, Admiral?" one of them asked quietly. Corvin took a long breath. "We find out what this thing wants. We find out before it reaches the core worlds." He turned toward the stars, his reflection faint in the glass. "Because if it's truly human, then we're not facing an enemy." He paused, the thought chilling even him. "We're facing history itself." The Emperor of the Galactic Empire stood before the grand window of his throne chamber, watching the capital's skyline. From this height, Velis Prime looked peaceful, shining towers, endless lights, and the soundless beauty of order. But beneath that peace lay fear. Entire sectors were now silent. Trade routes were collapsing. People whispered of a ghost ship that moved like death itself. The Emperor's reflection stared back at him from the glass. Proud, calm, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. He turned sharply as Admiral Corvin entered, kneeling at the foot of the throne. "Rise, Admiral," the Emperor said, his voice calm but cold. "Report." Corvin stood, his uniform still marked with burn scars from the Varian disaster. "Sire, we've confirmed the intruder is still moving toward the core systems. It's bypassing fleets and colonies without slowing. It ignores communication attempts. It destroys everything in its path," the Emperor finished. "Yes, I've seen the reports." Corvin hesitated. "Sire, the research division believes this ship is not alien. It's human-made. It could be following a very old—" The Emperor's eyes hardened. "Humans? Again with that myth? The Empire erased them millennia ago. Their time ended before our dynasty began." "With respect, sire," Corvin said quietly, "what if we didn't erase them completely? What if something survived? Something they built to outlast them?" The chamber fell silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the Emperor's life support armor. Finally he spoke. "Then it will meet the same fate as its creators." He turned to his war council. "Prepare Operation Eclipse." The generals exchanged uneasy glances. Operation Eclipse was the Empire's most secret weapon, a plan designed for total annihilation. Corvin's heart sank. "Sire, Eclipse was meant for planetary rebellion, not for—" "This is no longer a patrol issue," the Emperor interrupted. "This is survival. If this ship is human, it carries the sins of a dead species. We will erase it from existence." Hours later, across the galaxy, the largest mobilization in Imperial history began. Thousands of ships, dreadnoughts, siege carriers, orbital platforms moved into formation. Entire moons were converted into missile silos. The Empire's most powerful weapons, the solar lances, were aligned toward a single point in space, where the unidentified warship was last detected. Corvin watched from his command deck aboard the Imperial Valor. His officers moved quickly. Voices tense. "Admiral, all systems armed and synchronized. Solar lances ready on your command." He nodded slowly. "Maintain targeting lock, but do not fire until the signal." He turned toward the massive holoscreen showing the dark object, still drifting, silent as a tomb. It didn't even appear to react to the Empire's presence. Corvin whispered under his breath, "What are you?" In the capital, millions gathered around holoscreens as the Imperial News Network broadcasted the event live. The voice of the anchor echoed across the city. "The Emperor himself oversees Operation Eclipse. Once the countdown ends, the intruder will be destroyed. The Empire will prevail," citizens cheered, but the fear behind their eyes was clear. Back in orbit, the countdown began. 5 minutes to firing sequence, an officer announced. Corvin's second-in-command, Captain Rell, turned to him. "Admiral, permission to speak freely." Corvin nodded. "Why is it just sitting there? It's like it's waiting for something." Corvin stared at the object's dark shape on the screen. "Because it knows we'll fire. It's testing us." The Emperor's voice came through the command channel. "Admiral Corvin, you are authorized to begin the firing sequence." For 3 days, the Empire said nothing. The holonets went dark. The citizens of Velis Prime whispered about what they had seen. The blinding light, the blackout, the silence that followed. Whole sectors had vanished. 7 worlds gone in a heartbeat. And still the Empire refused to explain. But truth never stays buried for long. At the edge of the Orion Belt, a civilian relay station picked up a weak transmission. The signal came from deep within the ruins of the destroyed Imperial fleet. The message was broken, full of static and flickering images, but the station's technicians could hear something. Voices, a woman's voice first, crying, then a man shouting, "It's alive!" The ship is then static, then something else. A deeper sound, not a voice but a tone, low, slow, pulsing like a heartbeat. The technicians felt it in their bones. The sound continued for exactly 13 seconds before the transmission ended. The station's commander immediately sent the data to Central Command. Within minutes, every screen on Velis Prime flickered to life, displaying the Emperor's seal. Then unexpectedly the seal disappeared, replaced by the face of Admiral Corvin. His expression was grim, his voice raw and heavy. "To all Imperial citizens, what I'm about to say was not approved by command, but you deserve the truth." He looked away for a moment, then continued. "The ship that entered our territory survived the full force of Operation Eclipse. It absorbed the attack. We've confirmed it destroyed 7 colonies using the same energy we fired at it. It's not a random attack. It's calculated." He paused, swallowing hard. "This warship, it learns." The Emperor watched the broadcast in silence from his private chamber. "He's breaking protocol," he muttered. His advisors begged him to shut the transmission down, but he didn't. He simply stared at Corvin's face. Corvin's voice continued across every channel. "We found fragments of our lost ships, drifting near the core of the destruction field. Among them, one message survived. It's from the crew of the Valor's Dawn, our lead dreadnought. I'm going to play it now." The screen shifted to a grainy recording. The crew of the Valor's Dawn appeared in chaos, alarms blaring, sparks flying. A young officer shouted into the camera, "We tried to communicate. We sent everything, like a voice code light, but it keeps repeating the same phrase. It's not attacking without reason. It's saying something." The camera shook violently. The image broke apart into static and screams. Then, for a few seconds, a strange pattern appeared. A glowing symbol, circular, with lines like a pulse around it. The audio that followed froze the entire Empire. It was a voice. Human but distorted, layered like 1,000 echoes. It spoke in an ancient dialect, one that most didn't understand. But the linguists who did wished they hadn't. The words translated to, "You took what was ours. You built your empire on our ashes. We are returning home." The signal ended. The Empire erupted into panic. The people demanded answers. Who were they? What did returning home mean? The government tried to contain the rumors, but it was useless. The word spread faster than light. Humans. For centuries, the Galactic Empire had taught that humanity was a failed species, primitive, extinct, erased after their wars poisoned their own world. The idea that humans might still exist was blasphemy, and yet the message was undeniable. In the Emperor's war chamber, scientists and historians gathered around the projection of the strange symbol, found in the recording. It matches no alien language, one said. But the structure, the patterns, they resemble old Earth digital encryption. Impossible, the Emperor said sharply. Not impossible, sire, said Dr. Seelan, the Empire's top xenotech expert. Only forgotten. Far away in the debris field where the Valor's dawn was lost, a lone Imperial probe drifted silently. Its sensors flickered, catching faint movement. The probe's feed showed the black warship, still motionless. Its hull, once smooth, now shifted and pulsed like it was alive. Then something new appeared. Tiny shapes emerged from the ship's surface. Small silver fragments breaking away like pieces of its skin. They moved independently, spreading out into the debris field. Drones, whispered an officer watching the live feed. Each drone carried the same glowing symbol seen in the earlier message. They began collecting the wreckage, pieces of Imperial ship's armor and metal. The drones dragged the wreckage back to the massive warship, where it melted into the hull, absorbed like fuel. The warship was rebuilding itself. Corvin watched the footage in silence. "It's harvesting us," he said quietly. Captain Rel looked up from his console. "Admiral, what do we do? We can't fight something that learns. Every time we attack, it grows stronger." Corvin turned toward him. "Then we don't attack. We find where it came from. If there's a mind behind that ship, it can be reasoned with me or stopped. But if it really is human," Rel hesitated, "then everything we know about the Empire is a lie." Corvin stared at the hologram of the warship, his reflection faint in its black surface. "Then maybe it's time the truth came out." That night, across Velis Prime, the symbol from the message, the circle with the pulsing lines, began appearing everywhere. On hacked holoscreens, on the walls of government buildings. Even in the Emperor's palace, 3 words followed it. Written in the old human tongue, "We are awake." The Emperor watched as the phrase flashed on every screen in the capital. His voice trembled for the first time in decades. "Find them," he ordered. "Find whoever did this." But deep down he already knew. It wasn't rebels. It wasn't pirates. It was something older. Something he thought his ancestors had erased forever. And now it was coming back. Across the galaxy, fear had replaced order. The symbol, the glowing circle with pulsing lines, now burned on every Imperial network, every broadcast, every city wall. No one knew who placed it there. No one could stop it. The words that came with it echoed through the dark. "We are awake." The Emperor had locked himself inside the war chamber, surrounded by terrified ministers and silent guards. Outside, protests were breaking out across the capital. Some demanded protection. Others shouted the unthinkable, that the lost humans had returned for vengeance. In orbit, Admiral Corvin's fleet drifted in blackout mode. No signals, no transmissions, just silence. The warship, the one that had destroyed 7 worlds, had vanished again, but every system in the Empire could still feel its presence. Corvin stood at the observation deck, looking out into the black void. His face was tired, pale, and marked with days of no rest. Captain Rel approached carefully. "Still nothing?" Rel asked quietly. Corvin shook his head. "It's not gone. It's hiding, watching," Rel frowned. "Waiting for what?" Corvin didn't answer. His gaze fixed on the stars, but something caught his eye. A faint distortion like ripples in space itself. He stepped closer to the viewport. "Rel," he said slowly, "run a scan on that sector." The crew obeyed, their screens flickering with static. Then came a voice, not from their systems but from the darkness beyond them, a whisper low and cold. "You shouldn't have fired." Everyone froze. "Trace that," Rel shouted. Corvin whispered, "It's not a signal. It's direct." "It's—" Before he could finish, alarm screamed. The distortion ahead began to shimmer. Shapes emerged, dozens, then hundreds of them, like shadows forming from the void. "Multiple contacts," an officer cried. "Power signatures off the scale." Corvin's blood ran cold. "How many?" The answer came back in a whisper. "Too many to count." The fleet outside the viewport began to flicker into visibility. Hundreds of warships, black as night, arranged in perfect formation. Each one bore the same symbol glowing across its hull, the same pulse that had appeared across the Empire. Rel's voice shook. "That's impossible. We destroyed the human fleet centuries ago." Corvin's tone was grim. "Not destroyed, buried." The sensor officer shouted, "Admiral, they're transmitting something." A sound filled the ship. a haunting mix of mechanical hums and human voices, thousands speaking in perfect harmony. The message was clear, and it came in an ancient Earth tongue. We are the fleet that died and returned. We are the ones your ancestors left to burn. You called it conquest. We called it extinction. The message paused. Then came the final words. Now the ghosts of your past are here to reclaim what was stolen. The transmission ended. On Velis Prime, the Emperor watched the live feed in horror. The fleet filled the skies, stretching farther than the sensors could measure. Ministers shouted orders, demanding retaliation, but the Emperor raised a trembling hand. Silence, he said softly. He looked at the projection of the ghost fleet, glowing in the war room. They were supposed to be gone. The Purge, Dr. Seelan interrupted. The Purge destroyed their colonies, not their minds. What if these ships are carrying more than machines? The Emperor frowned. Explain. Seelan's hands shook as he pulled up an old archive. Before the Empire, humans experimented with something called digital continuity. They tried to upload their consciousness into machines to survive the end of their species. Are you saying those ships? Yes, Seelan whispered. They're alive. Back on Corvin's flagship, the fleet prepared for battle. But the enemy didn't attack. They moved silently, encircling the Imperial Armada like predators studying prey. Admiral, Rel said, they're positioning themselves, but they're not targeting us. Corvin watched the tactical display. They're surrounding the entire system. A transmission request appeared on his console, encrypted in a dead Earth language. The Empire was dying. Across the stars, Imperial worlds burned, not from invasion but from fear. The people no longer trusted the Emperor's words. His armies were scattered, his fleets broken. And in the silence of the void, the ghost fleet waited, patient, cold, unstoppable. Admiral Corvin stood inside the command deck of the Imperial Valor, now orbiting a dark, uninhabited moon near the core systems. The ship's lights flickered from damage. Most of the crew hadn't slept in days. They had escaped the massacre at the border, but what they'd seen still haunted them. Ships that fought like living things. A fleet that thought and learned faster than any mind. Corvin leaned against the control table, staring at a faint, pulsing signal on the screen. It was the same rhythm that had haunted them since the first encounter. That steady, mechanical heartbeat, still transmitting, Captain Rel said softly. Same frequency, same pattern, Corvin nodded. It's not just a signal. It's a map. It's calling us somewhere, Rel frowned. You think it wants us to find it? Corvin's eyes stayed on the display. No, I think it wants to be found by the right person. On Velis Prime, the Emperor's palace was surrounded by smoke and chaos. Angry crowds filled the streets, shouting for truth, for answers. The great statues of past rulers, symbols of power, had been toppled. Inside the palace, the Emperor sat in silence, surrounded by frightened advisors. Reports poured in. Colonies gone dark, stations missing, whole fleets vanishing without a trace. The Empire was unraveling. Your Majesty, said Dr. Seelan, trembling as he approached, we've confirmed the Ghost Fleet has entered the inner sectors. They're not attacking, they're broadcasting something. The Emperor turned, his eyes sharp. What are they saying? Seelan swallowed hard. Coordinates, sire. The same ones Admiral Corvin's last transmission mentioned. The Emperor's expression hardened. Then Corvin's still alive. He stood, the weight of his armor creaking. Prepare the flagship. I will face them myself. His advisors gasped. Sire, it's suicide. The Emperor didn't answer. He looked out the window at the darkening sky. If this is the end of the Empire, then it ends with me. Hours later, deep in the void near the galactic core, the Imperial Valor dropped out of hyperspace. Before them lay a sight that froze every heart on the bridge. A massive structure hung in the darkness. A ring world, ancient and cracked, glowing faintly from within. Around it drifted thousands of derelict ships, human and alien alike, all pulled into orbit as if by gravity or memory. The signal was coming from inside the ring. Corvin whispered, By the stars. It's a graveyard, Rel scanned the readings. Sir, some of these ships are from the First Age, long before the Empire. No one's supposed to know these even exist. Corvin nodded. We were never meant to find this. Suddenly the comms flickered to life. Her cold synthetic voice echoed through the ship. Welcome, Admiral Corvin of the Galactic Empire. You have come seeking answers. Corvin straightened. Executor 09, I know your voice. The voice replied, You do not know my purpose. Then tell me, Corvin said. Why now? Why return after all this time? What do you want? There was silence, way long, heavy, unnatural. Then the voice spoke again. We remember when your kind burned our worlds, when your ancestors stood over our dying sun and said humanity was over. They erased our name, our language, our history, but they did not erase our will. Corvin clenched his jaw. That was thousands of years ago. None of us were part of that war. The voice lowered. The Empire still carries the blood of those who did. Then the transmission changed. The main screen flickered, revealing a massive chamber deep within the ring world. Inside it floated hundreds of glowing pods, human-shaped, suspended in energy. Rel gasped. Are those? Yes, the voice said. The last of us. The continuum. We have waited for the Empire to reach this place. Now judgment begins. The ship trembled as the ghost fleet appeared from the shadows, surrounding the Imperial valor. Thousands of vessels, silent and motionless, like sentinels awaiting a signal. Corvin knew they could destroy him in an instant, but instead they held position. He spoke into the comm. Executor 09, listen to me. The Empire of today is not the Empire that killed your people. The ones who did this are dust. But we can learn. We can coexist. For a moment there was no response. Then the Executor's voice returned, softer now, almost human. You speak as if the sins of the past can be forgiven, but forgiveness requires understanding, and your Emperor understands nothing. At that exact moment a hyperspace tear opened behind them, and the Emperor's flagship emerged. Rel's face went pale. Oh no! The Emperor's voice filled every channel, thunderous and cold. Admiral Corvin, stand down. The fleet will be purged. I will finish this myself, Corvin shouted. Sire, stop! You don't understand what you're facing. But the Emperor didn't listen. His ship's energy cores began to glow, charging the same weapon that had failed before. The Solar Lance, the Empire's most destructive creation. Executor 09's voice echoed through the void. He repeats the sins of his ancestors. The ghost fleet began to move. The Emperor's flagship fired. A blinding beam tore across the darkness, striking the ring world dead center. The explosion was brighter than any sun. For a few seconds everything vanished in white light. Then slowly the glow faded, revealing the impossible. The ring world still stood, untouched, and the ghost fleet had multiplied. The stars themselves seemed to shift as hundreds more ships emerged from hyperspace, vessels built in the image of the ancient human war designs, sleek and predatory. Executor 09's voice rose, layered and cold. You were warned, the ghost fleet fired. Beams of light tore through the Emperor's ships, shredding their armor like paper. The Imperial flagship cracked open, fire spilling into the void. Corvin's crew watched in silence as their Emperor, the most powerful man in the galaxy, was consumed by his own arrogance. Shut down all weapons, Corvin ordered quietly. Send an open signal. Rel hesitated. Sir, Corvin took a deep breath. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be gone. Let's see if they're still capable of mercy. He opened the channel. This is Admiral Corvin, he said. If you still call yourselves human, then listen. We can end this. We can remember together. The silence that followed was long, stretching into forever. Then from deep within the ring world a new voice spoke. It wasn't mechanical. It was human and calm, weary and full of pain. Admiral Corvin, you speak the words our ancestors once hoped to hear. You are not like your Emperor. The pods inside the ring began to dim one by one, their light fading as if surrendering to rest. The Empire will fall, but its people will survive. Learn from this. Remember us, not as ghosts, but as what you might become. The signal ended. The ghost fleet began to dissolve, each ship breaking apart into fragments of light that drifted into the void, scattering like dust across the stars. Corvin watched in awe as the last of the vessels disappeared. Only the black warship remained, hovering silently. Then, for the first and last time, it sent a final transmission. One single phrase in ancient Earth language. Cycle complete, the warship vanished. Days later, as dawn rose over Velis Prime, Admiral Corvin returned to the shattered capital. The Emperor's palace was gone, replaced by silence and ruins. The people watched him step out of his ship. The man who had spoken to the ghosts of the past and survived. He looked up at the sky. The stars shimmered faintly as if remembering. In the ashes of the Empire, a new broadcast began, Corvin's voice steady and clear. This is not the end. This is the beginning of memory. We are not gods. We are what they were, fragile, flawed, and still learning. Let this galaxy remember what arrogance costs. Somewhere beyond the stars, in the cold silence of forgotten space, a faint heartbeat echoed once and was gone. The galaxy would never forget the day the dead returned to speak, and the signal that once brought fear would now be remembered as the last transmission of humanity.